Firstly, Mr. Żurawlow, you are free. An important issue raised by the defense is the dire state of the justice system in Germany. The selection and appointment of judges, especially to the highest positions, is based on a decision by the government in Berlin. That is why the court's ruling was crucial. German politicians, starting with former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, were financially involved and profited from sitting on various boards of these companies. And none of the subsequent German governments addressed the issue of Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 in any way, thus accepting it. Can we be sure today that if a Ukrainian citizen were handed over to the German side, he would receive a fair trial? The defense argued that the courts in Germany are so politicized that judges are actually convicted for handing down judgments that are contrary to the will of those in power due to a lack of material immunity. Could a judge who would rule on this case not fear that if my client were acquitted, he would not face criminal liability because, for example, this ruling would violate Germany's interests? Furthermore, there are cases of infiltration of the political class or judges. Therefore, if Volodymyr Żurawlow's trial were to take place before the local courts, the verdict could be a mere formality. A few years ago, there was a very high-profile case of a judge who issued a ruling during the COVID-19 pandemic and was subjected to a real witch hunt. Namely, his apartment and office were searched, and all his computers were confiscated. He was then brought before a court, tried, and expelled from the profession. As the defendant pointed out, he would not have returned alive from Russia. Indeed, this case has an extremely emotional, political context. The court emphasized that the decision was based on a substantive rather than political considerations. The Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines were not blown up on German territory or in German territorial waters, but far from Germany, near the Danish island of Bornholm, and most importantly, in international waters. The case should therefore be assessed in the light of international law, which should take precedence over German law. Although the state of justice in Germany leaves much to be desired, the government in Berlin does not suffer any consequences for this. At the same time, Brussels imposes financial penalties on other European Union countries, in accordance with the principle of money for the rule of law. The European Commission blocked money from the National Recovery Plan and other funds to influence political decisions in individual countries. The Warsaw Court's ruling has shaken the media in Germany. In their narrative, they are supporting the Kremlin's propaganda. They call the destruction of Russian infrastructure sabotage. Indirectly by purchasing gas from Russia and transferring billions of euros during this full-scale military aggression and acts of genocide committed by Russia against the Ukrainian civilian population, which were already known to the German side before this event, the German state co-financed this aggression. Germany's cooperation with Russia went far beyond the economic context. The Polish court also clearly blames the Germans for the construction of this infrastructure. Under 2 Nord Stream agreements, approximately 110 billion cubic meters of gas per year were to be delivered to Germany. This is enough to meet the needs of the largest economies in Europe. That is why both German and Russian public opinion are now demanding that those responsible be held accountable. However, it is incomprehensible why it was the Polish prosecutor's office, specifically the district prosecutor's office in Warsaw, that referred the case for the extradition of Volodymyr Żurawlow to the court at the request of Germany. There is no doubt that Polish politicians had or could have had an influence on the case of Volodymyr Żurawlow. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk did not make any decisions regarding a possible abolition. In turn, politicians from the ruling coalition blocked the opposition's actions in this matter. Unfortunately, the Polish prosecutor's office zealously carried out what Germany wanted. Based on what we hear was a short A4 sheet of paper. They detained this man, conducted searches, and sent some items to Germany. This information was reported in the media. They filed a motion for arrest, and the court granted it. There are mistakes here, and I think it must also be clarified who exactly was responsible for this, because it exposed the Polish state to embarrassment. They acted as if they wanted to extradite this man. The justice system under Waldemar Żurek led to a situation in which a Ukrainian was tried in Poland for destroying Russian infrastructure. This is how he himself commented on the case. How did you experience this whole period of the arrest, but also the raid by the services, including the German services in Poland before that? It was completely difficult. I had to deal with it somehow, because I have a family, I have children. The Nord Stream gas pipeline was over 1,200 kilometers long. For years, the Kremlin's long arm reached directly into the wallets of Europeans, all with Berlin's consent. The agreement between the two countries was signed against the interests of Germany's allies in the European Union and NATO, disregarding the opposition of the United States. Under this agreement, Russia gained the ability to use energy as leverage, as well as billions of euros, which emboldened its imperial ambitions.